Why do we ignore our bodies? This video is really helping us to reclaim the wisdom we've been taught to fear, the body signals that naturally arise within us that we are socialized to suppress within these toxic, traumatic, oppressive environments that we find ourselves in so often, especially as Black women. And that is the focus of this video. So welcome if you are joining live. If you are watching on the replay, welcome. My name is Marissa Price. I am a healing practitioner, specifically helping sensitive, introverted, empathic Black women heal from things like workplace trauma, narcissistic abuse, and really coming back into our own power, our authenticity, outside of what people may have tried to make us believe about ourselves. And so this topic really came up in a group healing program that I'm facilitating called Silence Your Inner Critic. And we were talking about like the wisdom that our bodies carry, that so many of us have been taught to suppress, right? We've been taught that we can't sleep, for instance, when we're tired, when our bodies tell us we can't keep pushing past, right, these points of exhaustion. And this starts so early on as I even like think about my own experiences in school, right? Being told to push through exhaustion to get the reward, to get the accolade. And so many of us are questioning, like, what is this all for, right? If we are burnt out, if we are physically harmed, mentally harmed from this constant pressure to excel and succeed at all costs, right? What is the end goal here? Because the thing that we're often promised doesn't even come, right? And so if you are on that same journey of really questioning the messages that you've received, coming back into your body as a form of liberation, because re-embodiment, particularly as Black women, is liberation, because they want us to be disconnected from our bodies, from how we feel, from the natural signals that arise within us that really serve as a compass to guide us forward. They want us to be disconnected from that, right? And just view ourselves outside of our bodies almost, as if we're not able to tap into this sacred information that our bodies are giving us at all times, because our bodies love us and they're really here to protect us, right? And that's one thing that oppressive systems do not like, right? They don't like anything that gives us that information or that data that allows us to protect ourselves. Because harm, unfortunately, is the goal with a lot of these things that we encounter, a lot of situations, relationships, right? And just recognizing how often we have been taught to ignore the sacred wisdom of our bodies. It also asking ourselves, who does this benefit? We know that it doesn't benefit us because it leads us down a road often of exhaustion, of harm, of our bodies eventually giving way. Because there's going to come a point, right, when you ignore your body over and over again, that it's going to refuse to operate anymore. Because these signals that it's giving us over and over again that we're taught to ignore, that we're taught to suppress, are really telling us, right, what we need to do, when we need to rest, when we need to breathe. And I'm excited about an event coming up. I'm going to help us come back into our breath with a special guest coming up later this month. So please, if you're not on my email list already, please join my email list so you'll be updated. Let me link that in the chat. If you are someone who has been disconnected from your breath, from your body, if you feel kind of like completely out of touch with your body signals, know that, first of all, this is not your fault. So releasing any shame that you might be carrying around that. We have been socialized to be disconnected from our bodies. Given the history, the foundation, especially coming from the US, right, as a Black American, we've been socialized to be disconnected from how we feel. We've been told that we are just here to labor for other people. And so it doesn't matter if we need to rest. It doesn't matter if we're tired. It doesn't matter if we need things like water, breath, fresh air, right? Time to stop and reflect, time to heal. We're taught that we don't need those things, right? It's a level of dehumanization to disconnect us from our bodies. And so anything that you can do, and we're going to go over some practical ways to come back into your body, but anything that you can do, as simple as deep breaths, when you notice yourself feeling disconnected, when you notice your nervous system reacting, you are resisting systems of oppression that are telling you to be disconnected, telling you sometimes that, right, your body is unimportant. As long as you can labor for other people, as long as people can squeeze out what they need from you to make their lives better, it doesn't matter how you feel. That's the message that we often get. And so any point that you can identify to come back into your body, into your breath, again, re-embodiment as liberation. Know that you are resisting systems that are telling you that you're not human, that you don't need these things. That why should you have to take deep breaths? Can't you continue to be disconnected from everything happening around you, from what you're feeling when people are harming you, disrespecting you, right? Because that benefits the people who are harming you, right? So if you can come into that understanding and realize how many forces are at play that are trying to disconnect us from what we come here with, which is a sacred vessel, fully operational, right? That provides us all the information that we could ever need. And it's a tactic of oppressors to try to separate us from that knowledge, from that understanding. And so, yeah, let me get to my notes. But welcome if you are joining live. Let us know in the chat so we can say hello. If you're watching on the replay, please feel free to subscribe if you're interested in content like this in the future. This is a safe place for Black women and femmes to really come into an understanding of what we have been through to heal, right? Healing through liberation, liberating our minds and our understanding of what we've been operating in for decades, what we've been socialized to be in and be okay with, and really shedding that and coming back into our full liberated selves. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe to my channel. I also offer one-on-one support as a trained social worker and a healing practitioner, leaning into decolonial healing, which is embracing healing outside of the traditional Western way of healing. And just speaking from my own experiences, right, a lot of the things that I have been in when it comes to healing settings have not been very healing. Sometimes they've actually worsened the symptoms that I came in with. Because how we are trained often, right, it completely misses the mark of what so many of us are experiencing, particularly as Black women. The systems of oppression are completely left out of our healing plans. There's no acknowledgement, right, of the misogynoir, which is a particular hatred of Black women coined by Moya Bailey, right? That is left out of many Western healing settings. And so I'm really leaning into having an understanding of how all of these things are at play that are impacting our well-being, our mental health as Black women. And so, yes, I do offer one-on-one support as well. And this is a link to book an intro session with me. If you are still kind of on the fence, you know you need healing support, you can always reach out to me, hello@marissaprice.me, for a 15-minute complimentary kind of session where we can walk through if my healing program is the right fit for you at this time. So I'll put my email here as well. And that is my email. Okay. So yes, body disconnection is often a survival response rooted in trauma, rooted in racial capitalism, rooted in misogynoir and generational silencing. So we often have learned to shut down our body's sacred wisdom. Again, if you have the understanding that you already come here whole, something I've really been sitting with lately, we already come here whole, we already come here fully equipped. And we're taught and socialized that we have to seek out other people's things that they're offering us, right? To fill these holes, right? But the holes are actually created. We don't come here with the holes. The holes in our self-worth and our self-esteem, they're created, and then we're sold back the solutions. We're told we have to seek out, right, approval to continue forward, something that was already placed within us. And so often healing is coming back to your original self, who you came here to be, what you came to share, what you came to create, right, and give to the world and to yourself. It really means coming back home to ourselves. Healing does, right? Realizing that our bodies are not our enemies. They are our sacred allies. They are continuing to give us information about the environments that we're in, even thinking through my own experience in a toxic work environment. How many times I silenced, right, the rage, the hurt, the grief that I was continuing to experience in that environment, because that's what I had been socialized to do. And so how many of us have that experience where we know we're in a harmful environment and we're continuing to suppress, right? To the point where it may explode at a certain point. Because we often don't even have, and we were just speaking about this in my group healing program, Silence Your Inner Critic, we often don't even have the room to be vulnerable with ourselves about how we're truly feeling, about how this environment, because we're socialized to just push through. To what end? I think that's my question, right? To what end? What are we seeking? What is the end goal? Has it come from other people or for other people? Because we can learn from each other's experiences without having to go through the exact same thing over and over again. How was this person affected? Did they end up getting what they pushed their body through to achieve? And was it worth it? Was it worth the emotional turmoil, the physical toll that it takes on us when we don't honor our body signals? And why are we socialized from such a young age to be disconnected from how we feel? Right, just some food for thought. So what it means to ignore your body. So actually, let me put this up real quick. Gotta put up my banners. So what it means to ignore your body. So being disconnected from your body, how you feel. It can look like ignoring when you're tired, pushing through, skipping meals, or even bathroom breaks. And I want to speak to this because, again, the system that we're living in, the economic system, that often tells us to do these things, or it punishes us if we don't. Right? So there often is no room to take a break, to take a lunch break, to take a bathroom break sometimes. We've seen that. Amazon, I'm looking at you. Okay? We've seen this in real time. And so how is this reinforcing over and over again that we must ignore our bodies, ignore how we feel, ignore the sacred information and the data that is constantly being sent to us through this vessel that we're in, that is here to protect us, that is here to preserve our lives. On my channel, I often talk about like the beauty of the brain, right? Because I love the brain in the ways that it has protected me throughout my life, often through dissociation. And now healing from that, right? Now that I'm out of these environments where my brain went into survival mode to protect my identity and my sense of self. But these are just ways that our body functions without us even knowing it. These are involuntary responses to preserve our lives. That's how special you are, right? That's how important you are. Your body goes through all of these things to protect you within these environments. So it can look like silencing pain when we feel it, right? If we have a headache from stress, often from holding our breath, things like headaches can pop up, right? Insomnia, not being able to sleep, dismissing our intuitions. When we feel that a person, place, environment, situation is harmful, if we've been socialized from a young age to suppress, right, we're not going to have that information because we've been socialized to constantly push it down when it pops up. And so how can that, I don't want to say lead us into harmful situations, but once we find ourselves in harmful situations, the information that our bodies are telling us to leave, to exit. If we've been socialized to say, I'm not going to pay attention to that feeling, that can really like leave us in very harmful, dangerous situations. And again, asking ourselves, like, who does this benefit at the end of the day? The people who seek to harm us, who do not want us connected to our intuition, how our bodies feel, the information that they're sending us constantly. They don't want us to have any understanding of that. They want us to be disconnected. And so any point that you can identify, again, even through something as simple as breath, which I'll be co-hosting an event coming up later this month on breath work. Anything that you can do to reconnect to your body, know that that is liberation. That is liberation. And again, please join my email list to stay connected, because these social platforms, especially with Black women creators, right? They love to suppress content. And so please make sure you're on my email list if you're interested. I am so excited to co-host an upcoming event later this month that I hope to share soon. I'm working on it behind the scenes. Breath work, right? Breath work as liberation, re-embodiment as liberation, coming back into how we feel, the body responses that we receive, the information. While we're dealing with so much that's happening externally that's out of our control, how can we turn within and create a safe place for ourselves? Welcome, Kel. Yes, dealing with this right now. I want to leave and put my 2 weeks notice, but I fear I will be retaliated against or just flat out let go. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And I'll say, like, that feeling that we have, even speaking from my own experience, to leave, that's rooted in a very real place, right? Because we're often being harmed in these environments. And so the sooner that you can leave, I would say, the better. I know sometimes it takes a little bit of time to exit plan, but the fear of retaliation, so that is illegal. Something I've learned being in this process myself of being in a toxic work environment. So retaliation is illegal. And it may be something you want to look more into, how you can document that if that does happen, just to scenario plan. But yeah, knowing that self-preservation is key, right? Whatever that looks like for you, and knowing that other options exist for you outside of this toxic environment. And I'm sending you love. Yeah. Okay, so why we learn to disconnect. Let me put my banner up. If y'all only knew the work behind the scenes with StreamYard and banners, and there we go. Nope, that's the same one. Hold on. Oh no, that's right. Okay. Why we learn to disconnect. So survival conditioning, right? Generational trauma. This might have been passed down from generation to generation to generation as a way to survive oppressive environments. Disconnecting completely from your body, how you feel, your body's natural responses. If there was not a way to leave, and I'm thinking about enslavement. When you have your physical movement restricted for generation after generation, what does that do? What does that do to us psychologically? Right? A lot of us dissociate. I can't even imagine the level of dissociation that occurred, right? That's now passed down generation to generation, to dissociate from how we feel to survive these traumatic environments where our movement is being restricted. The commodification of Black bodies, right? So viewing other folks, viewing our bodies as commodities, trading, literally, if you look at the history of Wall Street, right? The trading of Black people, completely denying our humanity, right? Viewing us as objects to move around. And so you see the level of dehumanization that occurs externally. And part of my work is really to have us humanize ourselves to ourselves, because that is what we have control over, right? I can't control someone outside of me thinking that I'm not human. What I can control is me granting myself the ability to rest, telling myself, you're human. You're human. You can't continue. You're not a machine. You're a human being, right? Humanizing ourselves within systems that continue to dehumanize us. Welcome, Drell's Healing. I love that name, Drell's Healing Garden Journey. Yeah, it's great to see you too. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Yes, Kel says thank you. I think I may just leave without notice. I have a second job. Okay, it's just not worth my health. Mental, yes. Sending love back to you too, joining your movement. God bless you and everyone here. Thank you so much. Thank you. And that part, it's just not worth my health. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, because these jobs, right, they will continue to extract, to squeeze out as much as they can get from us. And there is no limit to that. There is no limit, right? So we have to view ourselves as so human, right? That of course we need to rest. Of course we need to leave this environment that's harming us. Our mental health, our physical health is far too important. Valuing what we bring to this world. Again, our bodies tell us how important we are. They go through all of these things to protect us. Things that we're not even conscious of, to preserve our lives. That tells us that our lives are that important. Our beings, our essence within this sacred vessel needs to be protected to such an extent that outside of our conscious awareness and understanding, our bodies are doing it without us even having to do, right? Without us even knowing what they're doing. Hey, Dr. Davia. I'll be on Dr. Davia's channel Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern to talk about mental health abroad. So please subscribe to Not All the Things. Yes, looking forward to that. And thank you. Absolutely. Thank you. So hypervigilance, right? Why we learn to disconnect. Things like respectability politics, right? Telling us to be disconnected from how we feel and keep pushing forward to gain approval and acceptance, right? And the question is, does it ever truly come? Or is this all set up for us to drain ourselves, to harm ourselves physically, mentally, seeking and striving for approval that keeps the bar keeps being moved and moved again, moved again? Does the acceptance ever come? Does viewing us as human beings, does that ever really sink in? Right? Why are we having to prove our humanity when we just went through all the ways that our bodies tell us that you're already worthy? And so why are we taught that we must seek and strive for acceptance, for external approval? And is it worth it, and does it ever come? And who does it benefit? The systems of racial capitalism, which I'll be speaking more about, right? Recognizing that this is not capitalism, this is racial capitalism. Overworking ourselves and how we're rewarded for abandoning ourselves, for neglecting our care, for dehumanizing ourselves sometimes as a result of the external dehumanization, right? That is internalized oppression. When we're telling ourselves now the same messages that we receive externally. And so that is what we have control to now uproot. We can't control what other people think, say to us externally. What we can control is how we speak to ourselves. In the rest, in the humanity that we lean into. That is what we can control. Okay, put up my other pen. So how the nervous system responds to oppression. So the body's stress responses often fall into four main categories: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so if you are constantly in this stress response, what impact does this have on our bodies, on our nervous systems that are not meant to operate in this mode 24/7? We've seen the ramifications, we've seen the health impacts within often our own families, right? Leading to things like premature death, even, right? At its worst. Dealing with mental, physical health impacts when we are constantly in a stress response. Oppression can also create emotional dysregulation. Something I'll be talking about too, why our nervous systems are dysregulated. We're living in systems that are pushing us to operate in a way that as human beings, we're not created to operate. They're socializing us to be machines. And we see the ways, and we just had a conversation about AI. As Black women business owners in my community, Black women freelancers, which if you would like to join, let me put the link here. But we see the ways that AI is being talked about. And some of the webinars that I've attended have been kind of disturbing. I'll say the ways that it's being regarded. I've heard things like cloning ourselves, right? And how beneficial that can be to double our output, to increase our production. A lot of these terms go right back to enslavement. And so having an understanding of that, the ways that this is operating, the ways that we're being socialized to be disconnected. And how that creates things like emotional dysregulation. If you're not connected to your emotions, and your emotions are the source of information that you were sent here with, that's going to create dysregulation. Right? If you're not aware of how you feel, how your body is responding to certain environments, certain people, if you're not aware that you're not breathing, you're not getting oxygen into your body, that's going to create symptoms of dysregulation, right? Because that's not the ways that our body was meant to function. So things like being numb or feeling numb, shutting down, being hypervigilant, right, as protective measures can show up as well as nervous system responses to oppression. The level of hypervigilance, especially in a toxic work environment, when things like surveillance, watching our every move, constantly see what we're trying to do. Again, the roots go right back to enslavement. That's going to create hypervigilance within us. And so it's recognizing these things that we're experiencing are not coming from nowhere. They're rooted in very real experiences that we're encountering day after day after day. And just having that awareness can be a point of understanding that it's not you, that you're not making this up. Again, refraining from self-gaslighting. You're actually in an environment that's reinforcing this. That's actually punishing you for going against it and adhering to your body's natural responses, for honoring your humanity. It's punishing you for that. And no, you're not making this up. This is not a figment of your imagination. This is what's happening. This is how oppressive systems reinforce these ideas that we're supposed to operate like machines. And so what it costs to stay disconnected it can have an emotional, physical, spiritual, mental toll. Experiencing things like anxiety, depression, low self-trust. Something I've been thinking about too. When you are disconnected from the information that your body is sending you constantly, how that can really develop into a lack of self-trust, right? Because you're disconnected with the direction that you're supposed to be moving in. Because we're disembodied so often within the society. And that can lead us to not trusting ourselves, right? When we're in an environment when we do receive that feeling that something is off, if we've been socialized to suppress it, to turn it off, now I don't trust what I'm feeling. Versus like you had that at one point, and knowing that you can get back to that, you can reclaim that. The society tried to turn it off, try to tell you to suppress it over and over again, but we see the ramifications of that. And so we know that's not the way to go, right? Our bodies would not be responding with things like anxiety, depression, illness, if we were meant to go the route of suppressing how we feel. That doesn't make sense. Feeling lost or disconnected from why you're here and how special you are. And again, all the measures your body goes through to protect you and to preserve your life. Welcome, Sharon. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Davies says, so many times we tell ourselves that it's not really as bad as we feel, and our body response may or not be connected to the oppression. Yes, thank you for saying that. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. So the self-gaslighting that occurs, right, that we're taught to do, I can remember this, my earliest memories, right? Me saying something that was in line with how I felt, and somebody questioning that, questioning my reality, and then me in turn internalizing that and now doing it to myself. Now I'm questioning my own reality. I'm questioning how I feel. I'm questioning, do I really perceive it this way? That is the intention of oppression. It's not an oversight. It's not something that someone accidentally did. No, that is the intention of what we're living in, to make us gaslight ourselves, to make us doubt our emotions, to doubt our perceptions of what we're seeing, to poke holes in the truth. That is the intention. And so asking again, like, who does that benefit? right? When you feel something so viscerally, and now you're the one, instead of externally someone questioning that, now you're the one to say, oh, I'm making that up, right? Your body's giving you the information and the data, but we've been taught to ignore it, to question it, to silence it. And what if we turn that power back on? Realizing that it's never too late. Thank you for sharing this, Sharon. Yeah, I dissociate a lot, and being with myself, being in my body is so difficult. It has triggered addictive behaviors that have caused a great deal of pain and shame for me. I appreciate you sharing that because I know a lot of people can resonate with that. And I'll say this is what we have been taught to do, right? So that can be a point of releasing the shame, the awareness that you have cultivated around this, and what it took probably to get to that point, because I can speak to my own journey, right? It took a lot for me to even be aware of what was happening and at play, and to know that even me like speaking it out loud is a point of resistance, because shame really like thrives in silence. And so the more that we're able to, like, on our own time, as we feel comfortable, like open up, we see that so many people have felt the exact same way, and it's not just us. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Dr. Davis says, yes, so true. Self-gaslighting is exactly what is happening. That's it. Self-gaslighting. Yep. Hello. Yes, Prophet Mother. Yes. Good afternoon. Glad I made it such an important topic. Yes. I'm excited to be speaking on a panel with Prophet Mother and Dr. Davia this Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, on Dr. Davia's channel, Not All the Things, on mental health abroad. So look out for that. Excited about that. So the journey back to our bodies. Let's talk about it. So this can look like healing practices, practical healing practices, knowing that this does not have to be complex, complicated, take a lot of time. Healing is really in the little things that you do throughout the day, the little points of awareness that you have, the substitutions that you have for one behavior that's, you know, is not serving you for one that is. One substituting in a self-critical behavior for one that's self-compassionate. Rewriting your inner monologue through micro practices over time, because you don't want healing to feel overwhelming, because then there's a tendency to just completely do away with it. You want it to be something that you can incorporate into your life with daily micro practices over time. So one of those practices may be having moments of awareness, placing a hand on your heart. How am I feeling about this? What is my body? How is my body responding to this person, place, environment, situation? Is my heart beating faster? Do I feel at ease? Am I taking in oxygen, which my brain needs, right? One of the things when we cut off our breath, which is a stress response, we're not able to really have the level of thought because our brains are not operating on full capacity. They're operating with limited oxygen. And so a point of healing can just be that when you feel yourself holding your breath, instead of like continuing on that, continuing to hold your breath, invite in just one breath. Just start small. One breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. And I've noticed from leading breathwork exercises in the work that I do, how you feel before you take a deep breath and after can be night and day. That's how quick the transformation can be. It can be through one deep breath. That's how badly our bodies are craving oxygen because they're seriously like they're operating to preserve our lives. That's how sacred and special we are, right? Housed within this vessel. Hey, Ask Beverly. Good morning, afternoon, Marissa, and everyone. I so appreciate your content. It really resonates with me. Thank you for sharing this. I appreciate that. And thank you for being here. Thank you so much. And to everyone who has commented something, know that that is so important to me. Like that touches me seriously. And so thank you. I never take that for granted. Somatic check-ins. And somatic just means body, right? So body check-ins. Where are you feeling tension? What do you feel? Where do you feel it? And can you release it? So if, like I tend to carry tension in my shoulders, right? So I'll just check in. Am I tensing my shoulders? The answer is probably yes. Okay. And so like even exercise like this, tensing your shoulders and then just releasing. And seeing how you feel before and after. That gives you the information that you need. Inviting in gentle movement and stillness and silence can be helpful. Reclaiming things like pleasure, rest, and softness for yourself. Reframing embodiment as a liberation practice. Reframing embodiment as a liberation practice. They want us disconnected from our bodies. They don't want us to check in. Oh, my body needs to rest. Because again, if we think back through the history of the US, right? How often, intentionally, like even through policy, punishment from being connected to our bodies. And I have an idea. I'm going to do a video in the future, right? The mental health diagnosis from seeking freedom from bondage, from enslavement. That was diagnosed as a mental health disorder. Being in touch with your body. So knowing that this is not why I was put here, to be in bondage. Absolutely not. You can tell me all you want externally. There's something within me that knows that that is not true. And actively pursuing that, and then it being labeled as a mental health disorder, right? And being confined sometimes to an asylum because you're seeking out liberation because of the signals that your body has given you. So know that coming back into your body any way that you can, through breath, through movement, through rest, is truly a liberation practice. It's not a luxury for other people to enjoy through our labor often. No, it's for us, right? This is centering your humanity to come back into your body. Knowing that your body is an infinite source of wisdom. It continues to give you information, data, signals, as long as we're living. And the power that you could have if you tapped into that once again, knowing that it's never too late to do. So as we wind down, and thank you so much for joining me here live today. If you're watching the replay, thank you also for watching. And please make sure to get on my email list because I will be co-hosting a breathwork session later this month. As so many of us are on the path, if we see the absolute chaos, harm, inhumanity happening externally, how can we create safe places for ourselves to be able to breathe, center ourselves, access all of our full spectrum of thoughts, which we need oxygen to do, as a form of liberation. And so please make sure you're on my email list because these algorithms like to suppress content. And then I also offer one-on-one healing if you're interested in that. If you're recovering from a traumatic work experience, as I have shared on my channel, like my journey to basically reclaim the parts of myself that that environment pushed out, labeled, or gave me the idea that they didn't want, and realizing that they didn't have that ultimate say and power, and really reclaiming those parts for myself. So if you're on that same journey of self-reclamation and self-sovereignty, I would love to work with you one-on-one. And here's a link to book an intro session with me. If you are interested in a 15-minute complimentary consultation to see if this is the right path for you, you can always send me an email, hello@marissaprice.me. So let me put my email in again. And so, yes, as we're wrapping up, put my last banner on here. Your body has never left you. Your body has never left you, right? Throughout all the things that you've been through, all the experiences that you've had, all the environments that you've been in that have tried to perhaps break you, your body has never left you throughout all of that. And so what has your body been trying to maybe tell you? What has it been trying to get your attention around? Through giving you signals, through giving you the information, right? Could it be you need to rest? You need to breathe. You need to take time off. You need to go outside. You need fresh air. Many times, like the signals and the information, they're directing us towards something that's relatively like simple. But these are often things that we cut off as a stress response. We cut off water intake. We cut off breath, sleep. And so it may sound simple, but just checking in with yourself, are you having these simple elements of life? Are you incorporating them into your daily practice? And if not, no shame. Knowing that you can always start small and work your way to whatever goal that you have, right? If it's more rest, if it's sleeping 8 hours, if it's anything, right? Anything that you have. Starting small and then working up over time. Not starting huge, because then it gets overwhelming and then we tend to put it down. Giving yourself like the flexibility and the compassion to start very small with micro practices and then work up to wherever you see your life going. So I think that's it. I'm just going through my notes. So just remembering that your body is not your enemy. So when it gives you these signals, this information, as we have talked about today, through things like policy, right? Rules in some of these work environments, academic environments that have punished us for honoring our bodies, it can feel like our bodies are our enemies, right? Why won't you just conform? Why won't you just stay up all night so that I can like pass this test in the morning? And realizing, right, that all along your body was trying to protect you, was trying to preserve your life. That's how sacred and special you are. And so your body is your ally. Your body is giving you the information, right, to make the decisions in your best interest. And what power could be tapped into if you reframe that in your own mind, realizing that we don't have control over what other people do externally. What we do have control over is how we perceive ourselves, how we treat our bodies and regard them, how we view ourselves as human at the end of the day. So yes, I want to thank y'all so much for joining me for this talk, Why We Ignore Our Bodies, Reclaiming the Wisdom We've been taught to ignore and fear, Um, As Beverly says, it's so interesting how we somehow manage to ignore our bodies when, as you say, it is offering us signals all the time. That's it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me on this journey, it has been really going back to childhood. That's where it started for so many of us, to push through, keep pushing through, keep pushing through. And it becomes so deeply ingrained, right? That we keep having to do more and more pushing to the point where our bodies just kind of, sometimes they actually give out and we can't go anymore. I know this has happened to me in college before. I pushed myself to such a limit that my body refused to even like operate. And instead of getting mad, right, as a point of healing and understanding what was happening, now I understand it was trying to preserve me. It was trying to protect me, to tell me I had to do something differently. But at the time, I was viewing that like as an impediment, right? Why can't you just get up and operate and go faster so that I can do this test, so that I can go to this interview, so that I can. And the power that can be gained when we understand what our bodies are actually trying to do: protect us, preserve our lives, right? They're not our enemies, they're our allies. Thank you for this, Dr. Davia. Thank you for your grounding presence. I appreciate you. And same here, same here. Thank you so much. Thank you for always holding space, Marissa. You're so welcome. Thank you for being here. And so, yes, if you're watching on the replay, please subscribe if this type of content resonates with you. I think I'll be going live later this week, maybe. I do want to talk about self-sabotage, that concept, and me just kind of getting deeper into how oppression is actually the root of that so often. So look out for that. I'll also be going live on Dr. Davia's channel this Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, to talk about healing, mental health abroad, with Prophet Mother as well. So I'm looking forward to that panel discussion. Oh, thank you for this. Thank you. That means so much to me. Thank you. Seriously. Thank you. I'm not going to cry, y'all. You know I'm sensitive. I'm sensitive. I'm not going to cry, though. Okay. Hey, good to see you here. Thank you. Thank you for joining, as always. Cal says, thank you. Love having these talks and sense of community, safe space. You're so welcome. Thank you for being here. Yes, thank you to everyone who was able to join live. Again, I'll probably be going live later this week, so look out for that. I'm trying to think of anything else. I'll be co-hosting a breathwork session later this month, so make sure that you're on my email list. I'll link it here in the chat again. And if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, I do have openings as a trained social worker, practicing decolonial healing, which means outside of the traditional Western ways of healing, which is very rigid, very structured. From my own experiences, have not gotten a lot of healing out of these spaces, right? And as I've shared, sometimes it's made what I came in with even worse. And so really regarding us as our own greatest teachers. Shout out to Alex L., who said that originally, right? But we have the wisdom within us of what we need, and it's really kind of just excavating what's already there to understand what's going on, and to be able to regain that sense of self-trust and reconnection to our intuition, because it doesn't go away. It just does not go away, no matter how many messages we receive to suppress it, to turn it off. It still pops up, right? Which tells me that it's meant to be there and it's strong. Out of all the times we try to suppress it and we're still receiving these feelings, right? Something is off. And we can't explain it, right? And not everything is meant to be explained. Some things exist outside of, especially the English language, to explain. But the fact that it's still there, after all this time, we think about like the generational trauma, the fact that we're still able to connect to our intuition is not a small feat. right? That's actually huge. And so, yes, if you'd like to work with me one-on-one, here's a link to book an intro session. You can always email me, hello@marissaprice.me, if you would like to speak with me. And I think that's it, y'all. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Wishing everyone a good day. You too. You too. Thank you for being here. And yeah, I hope you have a beautiful rest of, what is it, Monday, of your Monday. And I hope to talk to you soon. Bye, y'all. Thank you.